that may indicate knowledge of the attack before it began. ABC's Antonio Mora is here. Whether they ever get to, if they ever get to the bottom of it, it will be astonishing.
Astonishing, no question, Peter. What many Wall Street analysts believe is that the terrorists made bets that a number of stocks would see their prices fall. They did so by buying what are called puts. If you bet right, the rewards can be huge. The risks are also huge, unless, of course, you know something bad is going to happen to the company you're betting against.
This could very well be insider trading at the worst, most horrific, most evil use you've ever seen in your entire life.
One example, United Airlines. The Thursday before the attack, more than 2,000 contracts betting that the stock would go down were purchased. 90 times more in one day than in 3 weeks. When the markets reopened, United stock dropped. The price of the contracts soared, and someone may have made a lot of money fast.
$180,000 turns into $2.4 million when that plane hits the World Trade Center.
It's almost the same story with American Airlines.
That's a five-fold increase in the value of what was a $337,000 trade on Monday.
All of a sudden becomes what?
$1.8 million.
And there's much more, including an extraordinarily high number of bets against Morgan Stanley and Marsh & McLennan, two of the World Trade Center's biggest tenants.
Could this be a coincidence? This would be one of the most extraordinary coincidences in the history of mankind if it was a coincidence.
It is absolutely unprecedented to see cases of insider trading covering the entire world, from Japan to the United States, North America to Europe.
ABC News has now learned that the Chicago Board of Options Exchange launched their investigation into the unusual trading last week. That may have given them enough time to stop anyone from profiting from death here in the U.S. It may also give investigators, Peter, a hot trail that might lead them to the terrorists.
Thanks very much. As a reminder of the complications here, the Secretary of the Treasury said today of this investigation, you got to go through 10 veils before you get to the real source. Yep. Thanks, Antonio.
Death of money. Jim Rickards, welcome back to the Kaiser Report.
Thank you, Max.
All right, let me read you a quote from your book. Quote, "It was the most blatant case of insider trading I have ever seen." This is a quote from the first chapter of your book. Tell us about it.
Well, the insider trading referred to in Chapter 1 of The Death of Money, Max, has to do with shorting airline stocks in advance of 9/11. So there was insider trading ahead of the 9/11 attack. It was very blatant, very clear. It was not picked up at the time. It was by some people in the market, I should say, but not by the intelligence authorities or any national security officials, but it was seen in the market. That quote that you read, by the way, comes from John Mulheron. John was actually tried and convicted of insider trading related to the 1980s cases in the early 90s. His conviction was overturned by the Court of Appeals. The Court of Appeals said the trial court got it right. He was totally exonerated, but I mentioned that only to say that here's a guy who knew about M&A, leaked information, insider trading, etc. He was one of the most famous stock traders on Wall Street, ran one of the largest specialists on the New York Stock Exchange. He was, at the time, the market maker in American Airlines stock. So hard to find anyone who knew more about trading, more about insider trading, market manipulation than John Mulheron. And that conversation took place actually at CIA headquarters in Langley, Virginia. So it was part of an investigation. This all discussed in the book. There's a lot of academic evidence, there's forensic evidence, there's anecdotal evidence, but the case is overwhelming that there was insider trading ahead of 9/11.
All right, you mentioned this CIA headquarters and the fact that there was talk about insider trading ahead of 9/11 in the days leading up to the events of 9/11, particularly 4 days leading up to 9/11, looking at the forensic evidence and looking at markets as a way to aggregate lots and lots of data. And you talk about this in your book, the way that your team presents to the CIA a way of what you call market intelligence, or MarkEnt, which is to use this very sensitive options market as a way to give a telltale sign of activity that's happening around the world and whether potentially this would flag a terrorist attack. So in the days leading up to the 9/11, in the options market, in those airline options, you have concluded without any equivocation that there was insider trading on those options leading up to the event, correct?
Well, that's my conclusion, Max, but it's not just my conclusion. As I mentioned, there are 3 major academic studies as well as other anecdotal evidence all pointing in the same direction. So to me, it's an open and shut case. It's all described in the book, which is heavily footnoted, I should say. So it's not just sort of wild speculation. I think it's very well documented. We take a look at the 9/11 Commission report, which reached a different conclusion, but I sort of deconstruct their famous footnote where they describe why they reached the conclusion and show what the flaws are in the footnote, what the flaws are in the forensic technique that the 9/11 Commission used. But your larger point that markets give us price signals, we know that, but how to look behind the price signal and understand exactly what's going on. By the way, this technique, which we explored for the CIA, is a completely normal technique used by hedge funds every day. Now, hedge funds are looking for insider trading around M&A deals. They're looking for a leak. You know, we see this all the time. A stock suddenly soars for no reason. There's no news. Maybe the market's flattened down, but a particular stock goes way up, and everyone said, gee, what's happening with that stock? And then 3 days later, we find out that it's the subject of a takeover that's announced, but clearly the takeovers don't come out of the thin air. They're, lawyers and accountants and experts and managers work on these things for weeks and sometimes months, and that's the inside group. But sometimes the information leaks out, people trade on it, and you see the price action ahead of the announcement. That's exactly what we saw in 9/11. There was massive, massive buying of put options, and of course when you buy a put option, that's a bet that the stock is going to go down. Massive buying of put options on American Airlines and United Airlines in the last several trading days ahead of 9/11. And again, that's been studied extensively, so I don't think there's any question that it was insider trading. I should add, however, that
Marshall, we know from statements from Deutsche Bank here in Europe that these trades were done at Alex Brown, which is a firm not too far from the CIA, who was run by Buzzy Krongard. When I was working at Alex Brown, he was leading up the firm. He then took a job as the deputy director of the CIA under George Tenet during the events of 9/11. So here you have a firm in Baltimore where the trades were done that was run by the guy who's now the deputy director at the CIA. Your thoughts, your comments?
Well, Buzzy Krongard, former Alex Brown executive, was executive director of the CIA at the time. I haven't looked at all at the Alex Brown trading. To me, it's sort of irrelevant. What I look at is the market as a whole. What we were saying was really coming through the specialists. Now, you're exactly right, Max. I make the point in the book, nobody trades alone. If you're trading with somebody. So what I really focused on is the overall market action, not any particular firm, but could you tell from the price action and the volume and the momentum itself that something was going on at the time? And of course, we reached the conclusion that something was going on, which was obviously this 9/11 attack was about to happen. But I focus a lot on what's called signal amplification. And just to explain that for the viewers, you can have a very small terrorist trade, meaning, a few thousand shares. Well, someone sees that. It doesn't make the person who sees it a terrorist. They're just a specialist or a hedge fund or someone, is kind of watching the tape, and they say, you know what, there's no reason for the stock to be going down. There's no reason for anyone to be buying puts. Someone knows something I don't, and they'll buy more puts. That then puts more pressure on the stock. There's more put buying. So by the end of the day, you may have millions of shares that have traded. It doesn't mean all those people are terrorists or insiders. That's actually legitimate trading. If you're watching the tape and you do what I call a piggyback trade on the original trade, that's actually not illegal, and all those people are not terrorists. Only the original trade, my example, a couple thousand shares would have been the terror trade. The rest of it is piggybacking or signal amplification. But this is where the 9/11 Commission fell down, because when they went back to investigate after the fact, they looked at the big guys. The big guys are invariably not the insider traders. They're not the terrorists. They're the guys piggybacking. You got to go all the way down to that small initial trade to find it, and that's what we did on a multi-year strategic study for the CIA. We basically explained how you could use that forensic technique, that market information, possibly to detect the next spectacular terrorist
Right, you talk
attack.
about signal amplification. When I was talking to Cantor Fitzgerald, brokers and bankers in the days leading up to 9/11, they themselves were buying these airline puts. They told me, based on rumors that were coming out of Alex Brown, associated with Buzzy Krongard. So this looks to me as if CIA insiders knew enough about what was going on, but chose to make money rather than blowing trade options, you have to do it through a broker. We know from the investigative journalism of Lars Scholl, we know from statements from Deutsche Bank here in Europe, that these trades were done at Alex Brown, which is a firm not too far from the CIA, who was run by Buzzy Krongard. When I was working at Alex Brown, he was leading up the firm. He then took a job as the deputy director of the CIA under George, based on rumors that were coming out of Alex Brown associated with Buzzy Krongard. So this looks to me as if CIA insiders knew enough about what was going on, but chose to make money rather than blowing the whistle.
They're made. Oppenheimer and Morgan Stanley are warned on the 6th and the 7th. Goldman Sachs are warned. Wanted a put option, didn't grab his money quick enough, so 2.5 million was sort of set aside for whomever. And the SEC said, we're going to give you the list of every person who made the put options because they knew it, they were in on it, and they made money on it. Murder in the first is when you plan it and you make a gain with that murder. That options placed on September 10th. Now, the SEC promised, we will give you the name of every person who knew it was going to happen and made money on it. Well, they didn't. But there's a paper down there that I have from them. It's one of these papers here. You'll get it. Okay. Oh, it's down here somewhere. But anyway, what they did say, the SEC did say, we can't give you, now this is how they backed out of it. They said, put options are not really insider trading. Of course they are. I'm quoting them. Not really insider trading, but are merely foreknowledge of events. Well, what the hell is foreknowledge of events? That's what you use for insider trading. So the SEC said that, okay? That's what it is. And so they said, okay, we're not giving you the names, but we will tell you this. All the put options came from Israel. Put options are not really insider trading. Of course they are. I'm quoting them. Not really insider trading, but are merely foreknowledge of events. Well, what the hell is foreknowledge of events? That's what you use for insider trading. So the SEC said that, okay? That's what it is. And so they said, okay, we're not giving you the names, but we will tell you this. All the put options came from Israel. Okay?